Hey guys, this is Oakley, and I'm joined by Indypride, and we're going to be discussing sieges. So, partially kind of in response to what was just announced recently with the Vampire Counts walkthrough video of that siege, but also a lot of the other videos that people have posted from sieges. And there is some good stuff and some bad stuff, but I'll let Indy introduce himself, and then we'll dive right in.
Okay, what's up, guys? I'm Indypride with Milk and Cookies Total War, and yeah, I just want to say, yes, as Oakley said, there's a lot of good and bad things we've seen over the last few days. Overall, I'd say a lot of it has been really good. I think the gameplay has been awesome. I want to thank Creative Assembly honestly for being very transparent and showing us so much gameplay over the last few weeks. I did not expect the info dump we've gotten so far. Fans asked for unscripted gameplay. We got one in the unscripted Siege of Altdorf yesterday. It looks like a lot of fun to play. I was very happy with a lot of what I saw. Definitely have some issues we'll be talking about in this video. And some of you guys might disagree, but honestly, I do think CA has done a really good job taking fan complaints to heart and addressing those in a straightforward manner, which is really good. I'm glad they've been so upfront with their information dumps recently. So Sieges, there's been a lot of information that we can glean from that gameplay we saw yesterday. One of the new things that we've seen are magic ladders, pocket ladders. What were your thoughts on the magic ladders we've seen so far?
So, I think it's good. It kind of hails back to the way they did it with Shogun. Shogun was not as magical because they're actually seen climbing the walls. Back in Empire, people threw grappling hooks, so it was a bit more believable in that sense. Here, ladders popping out of nowhere is a little bit gimmicky, but something like that needed to be done in order to make the AI more competent at sieges. That's one of the reasons why in Rome 2 they added in the ability for people to throw torches at the gates, because otherwise the AI it kind of becomes totally befuddled at what to do. So it needs to give the AI an additional way to attack settlements. So I'm glad they took away the flaming torches. Replacing it with siege ladders is okay. I'm a little worried about just swarming the walls all in one super quick, but I did hear that there's a pretty significant debuff for using those ladders. So that's good. At least they have that on their minds, but it is a little worrisome that you can swarm over these first walls super easily, and it has me worried that there's no real fallback point. There should be a second set of walls or something you can fall back to if the first set of walls can be clambered over so easily.
Yeah,
But
I think
go
I
ahead.
think it's kind of a two-sided thing there because you can obviously the settlements are smaller than what we've seen before in a Total War game, so you can afford to put basically the first fight is always going to be on the walls. You can put the majority of your army on the walls and make it very hard for them to clamber over. And certainly, if the attacker is getting debuffed with all those pocket ladders, yeah, they're gonna have some problems getting over. Yes, I can see the argument some people will make that it's immersion breaking to see a unit pull a ladder out of their ass. I do get that argument for sure. But again, like you said, if it makes the AI better and more capable in campaign, I'm all for it. In Attila, I never got to defend in a defensive siege battle against the AI ever. They never attacked me, and when they did, they pretty much never attacked me. So that was one problem. But the other problem was that the AI has always had issues attacking in sieges. You go back to Rome 1 and get rid of the rose-colored glasses people. Rome 1, Medieval 2 had a ton of issues in siege battles as well. Creative Assembly's made some steps forward in the AI for sure since then, but yes, they've never really been able to make AI do really well in siege battles. So if they're going to give them pocket ladders and that's going to help the AI out in gameplay, I'm all for it. I understand the people who say that it breaks immersion, but I think gameplay is more important in this instance. So I don't really have a problem with it. Moving on now, there is something that I am scared about in what we've seen so far. Warrior of Sparta and Jackie Fish did gameplay videos. They got alpha access to Dwarf Karax. They got to play on Zufbar. I'm not sure the pronunciation on that. And they got Slayer Keep, Karak Kadrin. So we saw the layouts there, and honestly, like I said, I'm very happy with everything CA's done so far in the last couple of weeks in terms of releasing gameplay. But the Karaks were super disappointing and really uninspired, in my opinion. So a Karak is underground dwarf hold. It's basically an underground city carved out of rock, literally carved into the mountainside. What we have right now in the gameplay that Warrior Sparta and Jackie Fish released is an underground human settlement with a dwarf statue in the middle and kind of dwarf markings everywhere, but it looks nothing like a Karak. It looks like a human settlement with an outside wall and a gate, and it looks pretty much copy and pasted except for the cosmetics on the buildings and the walls themselves, which is not good. Um, Slayer Keep and Zufbar, they're two very famous dwarf holds. Like I said, Slayer Keep is a very famous dwarf hold, and they have, and this is the thing that really bothers me and makes me worried for people like a Pixelated Apollo or you or me who have done a ton of massive siege battles on YouTube. They have the exact same layout as Altdorf. Oakley will put this on the screen. He's going to show the layout for Zufbar. There's a really nice picture where you see that literally the Dwarf Hold and Altdorf have the exact same street layout, the exact same overhead mini-map view, which is insane to me. That's bad. You cannot have Dwarf Holds looking the same as Empire cities, especially when they're famous ones. So literally the human capital of the Empire and Slayer Keep have the exact same layout. I don't like that at all. Normally, I'd say don't worry, it's just a tier 1 Karak, but it's already been confirmed settlements don't get bigger and their layouts don't really change as they tier up. Just the walls and the towers get tougher and the garrisons get better as you tier up. So what were your thoughts on it? What do you think should be done about it, basically?
Yeah, so at first glance, the siege looked very impressive when we saw the first video. The visuals are great. They have this whole almost backdrop setting, which seemed very immersive, seemed very believable. It looked really cool. Obviously, you couldn't access it, but it did a good job of setting the theme. The problem, once we started to see more and more gameplay, was basically every single siege has the same template layout, and all they do is swap out art assets, environmental kind of backdrops, but that's it. The layout is going to be the same every time. And on top of that, the way you attack is the same every single time. They did say it was going to be from one direction previously, which I don't so much have an issue of. But the problem is you're attacking a straight line of walls. There's nothing to it. Every single settlement you attack is going to be a straight line of walls with towers firing at you from the get-go. There is no complexity to it. There are no kinks, bends in the walls. There's no secret ways in. There's no flanking. It's all rush the wall. That's it. And that's taking it to one extreme, whereas before we could go 360s around a settlement. There'd be ups and downs, secret ways in. There'd be variance in terrain. There'd be hills. There'd be areas to contend outside the settlement. There'd be a lot of interesting things like that, whereas now they've taken it all the way down to zero. It's super basic and not complex. So I think that's very problematic. It does obviously help the AI. It focuses up the combat, but I think there is a middle ground to be attained through there. So Indy, do you have any more comments, or do you want to pivot over to kind of our recommendations?
We can do that in a second, but I do, yeah. Basically, I think that a lot of the gameplay we've seen so far, the cities have been very flat. I do think that in Rome 2 and Attila, they did a pretty good job with adding staircases in like the core parts of settlements where you could like defend a staircase or you could defend a little hill and drop flaming balls down. You guys know that we love our flaming balls. There's a lot of terrain and layout of city differences. And of course, there are always going to be copy paste cities in a Total War game. There's nothing wrong with that, but there have to be some unique settlements. And we've only seen 3 or 4 sieges, and yes, the Karak videos we saw were from January. It is possible that there are that one that those are they're going to be changing the layouts. I'm not holding my breath on that. I don't think that the layouts for Slayer Keep or anything like that are going to get changed from then until release. But again, we've only seen 2 dwarf holds. It is entirely possible that Karak has an epic map as the dwarf capital of the empire. It is possible that we see those crazy bridges that we saw in that one little short trailer, or that we see that massive wall that you saw in the dwarf in-engine trailer, the Thorgrim trailer, where the orcs are moving up and then that huge massive mountain kind of just opens up fire. It is possible we're going to be seeing stuff like that. We haven't seen enough to truly make a judgment call, but what we've seen so far on the Karaks and the fact that CA was willing to share it, it doesn't give me a ton of hope. I don't want to freak out about it yet because we haven't seen everything that the game has to offer yet. But I do think that there needs to be more terrain inside of cities. This shouldn't all be flat. And I do think that more of the map needs to be utilized. So Yeah, let's go over the recommendations now for what we've seen in Altdorf, which I loved. I actually did love the Altdorf gameplay a lot. There were a lot of really cool things about it, but the Carax I obviously like a whole lot less. So let's talk about the problems with sieges right now and how they can be changed. So currently, I think there's a lot of unutilized space outside of the city walls. I honestly think they could afford to make the cities bigger. It seems like right now, when you look at the mini map, there's about a third of the map, maybe a little bit more than a third, is dedicated to the city itself, and then more than half of the map is the stuff outside the walls, which I think a lot of that is unutilized right now, and we have some recommendations that Oakley can go over on how to make the outside of the city more interesting.
Yeah, so I use this painter that I created. This is a tool that I created in Photoshop that allows you to just straight up create your own templates for Battlefield. So Indy and I were discussing. We just drew up one, which is our recommendation. So I kind of have several problems with the sieges as they are right now. One, they're too simple. It is just one. So we'll tackle this piecemeal. So the first issue is the walls are straight. Every single time the wall is straight, it has evenly spaced towers. It is the same thing over and over again. There is no strategy. All you have is do I attack left, right, or center? But again, it doesn't matter because you're attacking the same stretch of wall and you have the same towers wherever you are. So the linearity is the first issue. The second issue I have is there's no terrain within the city. It is entirely flat. Um, that needs to change. There needs to be differences inside the city and outside the city, not only in height variance, but also in terms of cover. And then third is they really need to add a fallback position within the city, and they need also advanced positions outside the city for you to contest. It shouldn't just be a fight straight up for the walls. There needs to be more variety to that. So the map that I've shown you here is just an indication of something that I would do. So just to show you kind of what I would recommend, the different colors. So first, the dark gray is my proposed city wall. You can see it's roughly, where they have it right now, but I break it up. The lighter gray to the north is going to be kind of the main routes within the city. And then the red rectangles or squares are going to be the towers, and you can see their arc of fire. Then outside the city, you can see different cliffs, you can see hills, you can see forests. So I think when you design one of these things, let's go across this for those three main points. So the first is the linearity of the walls. This layout addresses that. You keep it kind of linear, but you allow a lot of kinks. You can see the main attack is going to come from the front. That's where the most of the walls are kind of set up linearly. That's okay. But you have to make positions with enfilading fire. This is where you put a lot of the towers. However, around the flanks, I really think there should be more kinks there. So if you look on the far left, the settlement kind of kinks in, and there's a gate, which is that black section, allowing you to wrap around and perhaps get a flank. On the right, there is also kind of a wrapping around, but then there is this protrusion, which Indy and I talked about, and that is kind of going to be this outside keep that protrudes out from the city, and there is a bridge walkway that allows you to get to there. So you'll notice that there are no towers in that position. That means that you have to actively shuffle around infantry, which I think is important. I don't think the defense should rely solely on towers. You have to shuffle around your infantry. So this is a good layout because it forces you, yes, towers can cover the center, but then you have to shuffle your troops to get to the flanks. The second point I talked about is going to be the terrain. And so outside the settlement, you have to have different terrain. So you have to have terrain to break up the line of fire of the defenders. So if you look at the line of fire of all those towers, it's mostly facing the center. However, some of the cliffs, some of the hills do allow the attacker to get some cover moving up. That's going to be very important. Otherwise, if it's just flat open field like Pelennor Fields, all you're left with strategically is charge up front and center. That's it. On the left, you'll see I provided some forests. There needs to be a different approach. There needs to be fuck it, I'm going in, straight up approach down the center. But on the flanks, you need to provide cover, like the forest, to provide cover from line of sight, but also shelter from incoming fire, which allows you to approach the settlement perhaps more easily. So that is the differentiation in terrain. And then the third point that I was talking about is more of a contention between the inside and outside of the walls. So if you look within the city, there is going to be these fallback points within the city. Now, I think it's going to be important to have perhaps some ways to get in through there. I don't want it to be further gatehouses, but at least make more walls where you can put defenders up in an elevated position. So I think the main struggle should happen at the walls. where you have to bust through gates and towers. But within that, I think there should still be strong points, but they shouldn't be as strong. So that's inside the city. Same thing for outside the city. That's the example of that protrusion that we showed, where maybe you're having a fight for this place that isn't necessarily part of the city. And then maybe also have some outcroppings, some villages, some key areas that you want to control. That if the defender gets control of, perhaps if they get control of that area, they have a line of sight into the settlement, or perhaps it allows them to set up artillery, or it allows them to get access to a place that isn't otherwise defended by towers. So I think there needs to be a lot more uh, of an analysis of the kind of pros and costs and risk and reward for the settlements. So this is kind of my proposal. I've rambled a bit about this. Did you have any feedback or comments?
Yeah, I think that inside the city is one thing that I definitely want to see change. I agree with there should be different terrain. Again, I think that this is something that Rome 2 and Attila did very well, especially because when you look at something like Constantinople, like the city layouts were just very different. So look at Constantinople or Rome. Rome is it has bridges inside and it has buildings you could fight over. So when you get inside the city, you would have to cross across a bridge where there could be a pike on the other end, or archers kind of in flanking spots where they could shoot across the bridge into your flank, and that made attacking inside the city very hard, very cramped quarters. But then you go to something like Constantinople, and it's a complete shift in tactics. There's that outer wall of Theodosian walls, but then there's a big killing field inside that gives you a lot of room and space to maneuver cavalry. And of course, if you guys have seen our Fall of Athens video or you've seen Devastation of Constantinople, there were completely different tactics that we employed in those games, and they were epic sieges. Like they're some of, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, I was a part of it, of course, but there's some of the best sieges on YouTube, some of the best gameplay videos on YouTube because they gave you the opportunity to try and employ so many different tactics on different areas of the map. We went from in Constantinople from a very open killing field to a part of the battlefield where we could plot pikes in a narrow city street and prevent them from getting inside. So it gave you a lot of different gameplay opportunities, and it was really interesting that way. So right now, what we've seen from Sieges so far, and again, we've seen very limited amount, so it's hard to make a judgment call on how the entire game will be. But if it stays the exact same, I do think that the terrain inside cities is kind of boring. It's all flat for all the cities we've seen so far. And I do think that there should be strong points in the city, like an outpost or a building that you can fight over. That say, if you took over the building, you can plant guys up top that will give them line of sight to start shooting into people or give you more vision inside the city. And then bridges, like choke points where you can plop down a halberd unit at the end and kind of just hold off the choke point that way. So I think that there needs to be magic is going to be a really nice thing for Warhammer because it is going to add a very new dynamic to siege battles. Like I said, Foot of Gork stomping on a big blob of infantry in the middle of a settlement, that kind of thing. But there needs to be more gameplay variances in terms of how the city is laid out. Because, look, guys, most of us at this point really like Warhammer. We're really excited for the game. We can't be having a dwarf hold looking the same as an empire settlement. It doesn't make sense. It flies in the face of lore. It flies in the face of gameplay. It's not a good thing. Very, very much hoping that CA is going to redesign the Caracs to make them more lore friendly and make them more interesting in a gameplay sense. Because right now there's no functional difference between them and Empire or Vampire settlements,
Yeah,
which
all the
is wrong.
settlements play the same. Yes, they'll look different, but that doesn't really matter. They all play the same. And if every city plays the same, and like Indy said in the beginning, even if you upgrade your city, it's just going to have bigger towers. Nothing changes in the layout. It's and that is kind of the definition of poor replayability. Is it's essentially the same, and all you get is a reskin. Every time you get a reskin, oh, a different faction takes it. Yes, it's nice that they put all the artistic touches on it, but it plays the exact same regardless of who owns it, regardless of how upgraded it is, regardless of where it is. So that is a big problem. So again, just the three recap points that I think they need to address is fix the linearity of the walls, add different terrain inside and outside the settlement, and then add different areas that you have to fight over both within and outside the main walls. There needs to be a differentiation in where you fight for. And all of that should provide different tactical choices for attacking a city. Right now, you have almost none of that, which is going to get stale very, very quickly.
Not just in multiplayer, but in single player as well. And of course, many of you guys are just going to be playing single player. imagine playing the same settlement over and over again. Yes, the background is going to look different. The back of Altdorf, the back of Slayer Keep are going to look different, but the functional space where you're playing in won't. And yeah, that will get boring and stale pretty quick if it doesn't change.
Cool. Yeah, so I think that's it. So sieges do look promising so far in terms of the changes they made, the aesthetics. But I'm a little worried, like we said, about gameplay getting stale, repetitive. They can obviously add stuff in, but we've never really seen them patch in maps. So that's what has me worried. So it's definitely a point that they need to push forward. Sieges are going to be a big part of this game, um, just because of the theme and the lore. But also gameplay wise, as you're crusading across the lands, taking a settlement should definitely play differently depending on who you're attacking, and especially given the rich lore, better way to represent all that. So I think that's it. We can wrap it up. Do you have any final comments?
No, I mean, I'm obviously really excited for Total Warhammer. I think it is going to be a great game. And again, I'm happy with Creative Assembly and how straightforward they've been with their gameplay. They have taken the Siege of Carthage and kind of twisted it on its head and shown us real gameplay and real unscripted stuff, which I think is a great step forward for the company. I don't like I don't like keeps right now. I don't like dwarf holds. I think they need to change really bad. That's my thoughts on it. Keeping it constructive is really important. I think that if we're going to rip apart a game, which is fine, you should give recommendations on how it can be improved. And hopefully that's something that we did this video was gave some recommendations that will help the game get better. Of course, I don't know or don't think CA will implement these, but if they do, that would be awesome. And other than that, hope you guys enjoyed the video.
Yeah, we'll see you guys next time. And post your comments below how you think sieges can be improved, what your suggestions are. And feel free to use that battlefield painter that I created before to make your own settlements and whatnot. I think just putting more ideas out there will inspire more people to comment and also maybe even give the developers some ideas. They've done it, a great job in the past, and I think they can do it again. So yeah, that's it. See you guys in the next one. Bye.